I don't just talk about other people's stuff, I also make my own. Books in particular. To date, I have 4 books you can check out on Amazon. Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and the short story collection Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Hop on down to the description for Amazon links to all 4 books. Enjoy whichever ones you read, and enjoy the video.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to One Monstrous Moment, Star of Ultra Edition. Now, given that naming convention, I figured I would look at a scene from the Ultra series. Now, given that the Ultra series is almost as long and prolific as the Godzilla series, that is certainly no easy task, but I think I've got something that will do the trick. Let us turn for a moment to Ultraman Cosmos, specifically the movie that starts it off, The First Contact.
The scene itself goes like this. It's the final battle between Ultraman Cosmos and alien Baltan for the fate of the Earth. It's been a tense fight, but having shifted to Corona mode, Cosmos finally has the upper hand. He delivers a sound thrashing to Baltan and seems poised to finish him off.
But before the finishing move can be delivered, we're treated to a rare sight for the Ultra series. Quite suddenly, Baltan throws the fight.
He raises his hand, silently pleading for Cosmos to stop, which he does. Baltan is finished, and they both know it. Tears pour from the alien invader's eyes before he collapses. If not dead, then certainly on the threshold. Hundreds of Baltan children float down from the meteor on which they live and carry him back as humanity looks on, moved by the tragedy of what they have seen.
In order to understand what makes this moment such a big deal, we must first understand why Ultraman Cosmos was so different from the rest of the Ultra series.
The show for which this movie is the pilot was designed from the ground up to be a much lighter series than its predecessor.
There was a concern in Japan at the time that children were being overexposed and desensitized to violence. So, Cosmos was designed to put forward a message of pragmatic pacifism.
Kaiju and aliens in this series are neither vicious animals nor evil invaders who must be killed so mankind may survive. Instead, monsters are considered worthy of preservation and might even be friendly unless provoked or mutated, and aliens are intelligent beings who, though still defaulting to invasion when they arrive, are not fully evil and can be negotiated with. Now, I did say pragmatic pacifism earlier, meaning there is still a need for Ultraman Cosmos to fight, but he does not kill. This is an Ultraman who saves everyone when he can.
Well, that's what happens in the show. In the movie, sacrifices have to be made.
The first monster who shows up is Don Ron, awoken by Baltan as a power move to force mankind into submission. The initial response by the SRC, a benevolent group devoted to preserving kaiju rather than killing them, attempts to subdue Don Ron and return him to where he came from alive. It almost works, but the process is interrupted by the military group Sharks, who use the opportunity to kill him. Rather than cheer and feel relief when they've been saved, the crowd of onlookers feel terrible that they had to witness this innocent creature's death.
Now, technically, Don Ron is as much a victim of Baltan as he is of humanity, which could hurt the alien's credibility when it comes to being sympathetic. However, the movie makes it clear that the situation is more complicated than it first appears.
It doesn't get too complex. It is still a kids' movie, after all.
Yeah, I should probably elaborate on that a bit more, shouldn't I?
As alluded to earlier, Ultraman Cosmos the series was made to impart a message to the youth of Japan, and The First Contact doubles down on that idea by being explicitly made for kids.
Now yes, the Ultra series was always aimed at children first and foremost, but it was never presented in an overtly childish way, which allowed it to gain an adult following.
The First Contact, however, is one of the handful of Ultra stories told exclusively from a child's perspective, and thus it has a childlike sensibility to how it presents the material.
I bring that up so as to make it clear that when we say it's more complicated, we mean more complicated by the standards of a kids' movie. This ain't Tolkien or film noir we're talking about here. But with that said, I did still choose this scene for a reason. Now, like I said, since Baltan is the one ultimately responsible for Don Ron's death, that could paint him in the light of being an unsympathetic, irredeemable villain. Indeed, many fans probably viewed him in that light on their first viewing anyway, because Baltan is one of Ultraman's archenemies.
The Baltan race debuted in the second episode of the original Ultraman, and they made an instant impression. The combination of their insectoid design, their power set, and their backstory proved to be just right, and the fact that they were one of the few recurring villains in the series helped them take root in people's memories. To this day, it's rare for a new iteration of Ultraman to appear without the Baltans showing up in some capacity.
This popularity is why Baltan was chosen for the movie, but the conceit of Ultraman Cosmos was to put forward a message of peace and redemption rather than of violence and condemnation. So the big question is, how do you apply those themes to a villain as wicked as Baltan?
Let's look back, shall we? After all, the Baltans weren't completely unsympathetic when they first showed up.
According to their backstory, their world was destroyed by a nutjob setting off nukes, which turned them into interstellar nomads looking for a new home. It just so happens that Earth suits their needs. When Mars is suggested as an alternative, it's revealed that they can't live there because a substance that's toxic to them is prevalent on the Red Planet.
Sure, they're still hostile by nature, but their plight is understandable when you think about it.
Indeed, those elements were present from the very beginning. All the First Contact had to do was make a few tweaks.
In a broadcast following the death of Donron, Baltan tells the people of Earth that their homeworld was destroyed by ruining the environment, and so they have come to wrest control from mankind and set things right before Earth too is destroyed.
It just wouldn't be a kaiju movie without paying lip service to environmentalism, would it?
Yeah, I think it's written somewhere in the Japanese constitution. Anyway, that reasoning may sound slightly more altruistic, but Baltan is still Baltan, so the only solution he sees is war. The children, however, have some objections.
That's right, there are younger Baltans in this movie. Despite some initially dubious actions like possessing a little girl, it turns out that these young aliens don't want conflict any more than the young humans do.
It's the adults, specifically Baltan and the members of Sharks, who want war. But as far as the children are concerned, if peace is even a slim possibility, it should still be explored.
In fact, we see the SRC successfully subdue Baltan during his second attack, and there's a bit of hope that peace can be achieved, but then the Sharks show up again and attack him, which puts the kibosh on that.
And naturally, this is when Ultraman Cosmos steps in to save the day, as any good Ultra would do. And all of this brings us back to the scene where Baltan throws the fight, and why it's such a big deal.
As mentioned, Baltan is one of the greatest villains in the whole Ultra series, not to mention one of the most hostile, and yet here we see him not only surrender, but shed tears before collapsing.
In this moment, when he's at death's door, we finally see Baltan's true colors.
This Baltan, like all previous iterations before him, was fighting for the sake of his people, but unlike past iterations, his hostility was not born from a desire to conquer. Think about it. His people are nearly extinct. The potato-shaped rock on which they arrived is the last fragment of their homeworld containing the last remnants of his kind, all of whom are kids. Baltan has been fighting for his children, just like any parent would.
He weeps not because he lost, but because his loss, indeed his choice to attack as the first move rather than seek a peaceful solution, has left his children with no guardian and may very well have doomed them.
There's no way the children can stay on Earth after this. Even if they want peace, his violent actions mean humanity will always view them with suspicion. Ultraman Cosmos cannot take his place as their protector because he's needed elsewhere in the universe.
And all of this, mind you, is on top of the guilt he must feel for being part of the generation that destroyed their homeworld in the first place.
Baltan has ruined everything, so in his final moments he chooses to set an example by not fighting to the death. He will not make Cosmos a killer, and he will not teach his young charges that violence is the only course of action, even when defeat is inevitable. If he does not survive to resume his role as caretaker, he can at least impart that much to his children in the hopes that they will survive and do better than he did. Based on how the children carry him back home, and how Cosmos lets them leave without further violence, the lesson seems to have resonated.
In summation, it provides some great insights into Baltan without betraying the established character. And it delivers everything you could possibly want from the rest of the Ultra series. So it is that I chose that as my one monstrous moment for this particular edition. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. What, you thought it was over? Oh no. There are many other videos on the One Monstrous Moment Star of Ultra playlist. Click on the link at the end of the video, or hop down to the description or to the pinned comment down in the comments section, and begin your journey. There's some fascinating stuff lying ahead of you.
Congratulations, you reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, you might want to consider supporting us on Patreon. Of course, the other way to support us is to go to Amazon and check out our books, Operation Red Dragon, The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, The Occult Mafia, Emerald of Maddox City, and Assorted Absurdities, Tales of Kaiju Punk and Other Genres. Also check the description for links to DeviantArt and other platforms we operate. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.